Welcome to the Sisterhood of Sweat. I am here today with Miriam Jacobson. Miriam is a triple board certified functional medicine dietitian with 15 plus years experience of helping people improve their physical and mental well-being through food, mindset, lifestyle, breath work, and somatic treatment so they can feel more alive in their bodies. Miriam's healing practice is greatly influenced by her personal journey of losing her father to 9/11 when she was 18, being poisoned by pollutants from the two twin towers falling, and surviving breast cancer. She is writing a personal memoir on healing through trauma. The founder of Everybody Bliss, Miriam's holistic healing approach challenges current medical narratives by examining physiological, biochemical, social, and emotional factors to resolve underlying mystery symptoms of poor digestion, fatigue, and mood imbalances. Miriam is a renowned speaker on transforming grief into health and has been featured in HuffPost, New York Magazine, BuzzFeed, Mind Body Green, Hum Nutrition, and Voyage LA. And today we talked about healing your gut, how we also have to work on emotions and trauma and things that is really we've stuffed down deep inside it goes and coincides hand in hand with our mind body, working on the gut, healing, working on the emotions, nurturing our body, having great probiotics, why it's important to have a prebiotic and a probiotic. We talked about healing poor digestion, leaky gut, healing your gut so that you have great neurotransmitters going on with the serotonin, the dopamine, all of the things that we need to be happy, how laughter heals the body, and how we have 1,000 chemicals go off from our emotions, and how important finding a way and an outlet. We talked about different outlets for our emotions. It was so good today. It was such a great podcast talking about how I still think there's more to discover about the gut and all of the things, since it is your second brain. So I hope you guys really enjoy this. It was really good today with Miriam. I'm very excited today to welcome Miriam Jacobson to the Sisterhood of Sweat.
Thank you so much, Linda. I'm excited to be here.
We have been talking just a little bit before this, and Miriam has a backstory about how she got into this whole, like, how trauma affects your gut and basically physician heal yourself type of thing. And I just want Miriam to kind of tell you guys how she even got into the space of helping people to heal their gut, work on trauma, and all of that together.
Awesome. Thank you again so much, Linda, for having me here. And my work as a functional medicine dietitian has really been informed by my own personal healing journey, like you've mentioned. When I was 13 years old, I had a major rupture. My dad was killed on September 11th. He worked on the 110th floor of One World Trade, and at that point in my life, I wasn't equipped to handle the amount of trauma and stress that was around me. Like, my inside world fell apart, my outside world fell apart. And so when all of this was happening, I really repressed a lot of my emotions. I was so scared to grieve and what that would mean. And so I plastered a smile on my face and I pretended that I was okay. And I really shoved a lot of my emotions down, and they started coming out physically. So at 13 years old, I struggled with migraines and stomach pain and backaches, and I was sleeping like 14 hours a night and never feeling well rested. And until years later, I found out this like deeper connection as I started studying nutrition and functional medicine. And I always knew I wanted to be in a helping field. And as part of, I go to college, and as part of a helping field, I have to start taking science classes. So I stumbled upon a nutrition class and I just was fascinated with how food interacts with our body on a physical level. And, fast forward a few years, I became a registered dietitian. I started understanding the impact of food as medicine on my own body and how I could help other people do that. And as I started diving more into my physical health, I realized the importance of the mental and emotional pieces have on our physical stress levels, and also specifically the connection between trauma and dysregulated nervous system and our gut health and our gut function. And I found that by addressing pieces physically and physiologically in combination with the mental, emotional, and somatic, those like embodiment practices, has been the most powerful way for me to heal my body. And so that's really the focus that I've taken in my client work.
And that I really, I must first of all say I'm so sorry for your loss during 9/11,
Thank you.
and that was a very scary time for so many. But also, I imagine the listeners can relate to the feeling like you have to go on and stuff it down and put a smile on your face when your world is falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
And tell us why that isn't necessarily true or
Mm-hmm.
or healthy.
Yeah, well, I think it's so interesting because in looking back in my own story, I realized that that was survival mechanism. I have so much compassion for my younger self because she did what she needed to do to survive and get through that time period. And I don't always think that it's time to heal. I think sometimes we need to grieve, we need to like be raw, we need to be open, and but sometimes it's when there's not a sense of safety, it's really hard to do that. So for anyone out there who's like, oh my gosh, I need to heal, or I need to fast forward on my healing journey, know that just showing up and being compassionate with yourself and giving yourself permission to be where you're at is also part of that process and part of that journey. But when I was finally ready, when I was in a place where I was like, okay, I have my feet on the ground again, and I know my life isn't collapsing anymore, but I have all of this emotional turbulence left over, and it
Right,
really is
right, right,
impacting my
right.
body and it's impacting my life. That was the point in which I was like, okay, I'm ready to finally unpack this and look deeper into this. And it was only until I felt a sense of safety that I was able to do that. And I did that through therapy. I did that through EMDR, which is a type of therapy
Mm.
to desensitize trauma and integrate it in your nervous system. And later on, I've integrated breathwork into that practice as well. But I really do want to emphasize that it's like not always the time, but there always is a time to heal, right? There's a time to survive. And through that survival, we can then begin to access this level of like thriving in our lives.
And I think when we feel like our life is ripped out from under us, it brings so many emotions.
Mhm.
And I know there are people out there right now that had a life a certain way, and tragedy strikes. Either you lose a loved one, maybe a loved one that you thought was committed walks away from your relationship. So many things can happen. You lose a job that you had for 30 years. And then you have all these emotions, and we think we've got to put on a brave face for everyone else.
Mhm.
So I think it kind of misdirects our emotions.
Mhm.
And so, really, personally, I think it's best to just embrace your emotions, allow yourself to feel your emotions, whether they're pretty or not, because we think everything has to be gift wrapped up with a bow in a box,
Mhm.
and it doesn't. And I so related to what you said about healing journey being also sort of like, yeah, take your probiotics. I have an amazing probiotic sponsor, by the way. Um, yes, take your probiotics, Also deal with your feelings as they come, because it all affects that gut health. Why do you think trauma affects our gut health so much? I find that really interesting.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And it comes back to the mind body connection. Our nervous system is directly connected to our gut. We have an enteric nervous system, our vagus nerve. We have 500 million neurons that innervate our gut from our central nervous system. So even when we're experiencing stress, not even from the day to day stress, but that deep nervous system stuff, the chronic stress, the illness, the caretaking for other people, the divorce, right? Like marital issues, grief, that really deeply lives in our body and it impacts this connection of our vagus nerve. And so it's going to impact digestion. It's going to impact our microbiome, which then feeds forward. So we have this two-way connection. Our brain innervates our gut, and then our gut health impacts our mental health and our brain health because our microbiome makes neurotransmitters like GABA and serotonin, which not only regulate digestive function, but also, again, how we feel and operate in the world. And then that can also impact anxiety levels as well. And so there really is a two-way street where we have stress, we have trauma, impacts our gut, compromises our digestion, compromises our microbiome, and then that also impacts our mental health as well. And so that's why it becomes a multidisciplinary approach to really fix the gut that's been impacted by trauma, because we need to really work with the diet, but we also need to work with the thoughts and the way that we hold it in our bodies.
I still don't think that we fully understand the connection. I really still
Mhm.
think
Yeah.
there's more to discover about it,
Mm-hmm.
because they say that your gut is your second brain.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just listening to this guy that was like a leader of the FBI, and he's talking about if your hair stands up on the back of your neck, you better pay attention. So it's also like that queasy gut
Yeah.
feeling that kicks in, like a foreboding of
Yeah.
something that you're feeling. And I've learned, you pay attention to
Yeah.
that. You regret it dearly if you don't. And I even would go back to 9/11 on some of the people that didn't show up for work. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
um, I think like that gut is so closely related to your mind, your body, your emotions,
Mm-hmm.
that I feel like there's more to discover yet in that whole mind, body, gut connection. And so I just find it so, so fascinating when you think about gut feelings and how here you are unpacking people's to help them heal their gut. You're helping them unpack their feelings, right?
Mm-hmm.
Along with giving some self nurturing to their gut. Now, what are some things, so it's not too woo woo for everybody out
Sure.
there,
Mm-hmm.
that they can do
Mm-hmm.
to have a healthy, gut, healthy
Mm-hmm.
microbiome, make sure that they aren't having a leaky gut?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are great questions. And when it comes to healing the gut, always look at what imbalances are happening, and that can vary individually. And so, usually, I'll start with symptoms. So, if someone has heartburn or indigestion or bloating or abdominal pain, I'll address those symptoms specifically by maybe removing certain dietary triggers. Like gluten and dairy tend to be just a really potent trigger for the gut, as well as supporting digestive function. So that would be supporting stomach acid production, as well as enzymes, bile, and different digestive factors in the gut. And so that's one way that I'll do it. But in general, for people who are like, you know what, I actually feel my gut feels pretty fine, but I want to learn how to support it anyway. One of my favorite things to educate people on is the diversity of produce in their diet and of plant-based foods. And so I eat meat. I'm not a plant-based like diet specifically, but I have a plant-based diet and I eat meat, if that makes sense. And so about 60% I'd recommend of your diet to be of plants. And so that could be fruits, that could be vegetables, that could be nuts and seeds and whole grains and legumes. And a fun challenge is to include 40 different pieces of produce, different types of plants every single week. And that 40, that number 40 can be like a red apple and a green apple can be considered different because they have different phytonutrients. The colors are different. And so they feed different bacteria in the gut. And so the more diverse diet that you have, the more diverse microbiome you have because each fiber in plants will feed different bacteria. And that's how you create like a really robust, beautiful microbiome without depriving yourself, without eliminating foods. It's really can be a fun game because you're focusing on what to include and you're focusing on more abundance rather than deprecation, which is something that I always try to get people to get excited about.
And one of the things I really like about, since we're talking about this, Dr. Ohhira's probiotics are that it comes from fermented foods. And so, which is really the healthiest way to get your probiotic to help the microbiome. It's so diverse, and also it just works so well with the body because, well, if I'm putting in 50,000 lactobacillus or something, like I'm putting in certain types of probiotic, I could get too much and have SIBO in my upper intestine and then be bloated. So I think it's important to work with the body the way the body works best. So I really love doing Dr. Ohhira's probiotics, which I don't have to refrigerate, but equally, I would have a tablespoon of sauerkraut, uh, I would have some Greek yogurt. As long as I don't do too much of it, like I can't have the dairy every day, but I can have some. Or like some sourdough bread, which is also a probiotic. Just finding like kefir, different sources that you could add that in besides the vegetables. And I think it even affects like your skin all the way down, not only your skin, but also all the way down to whether I'm having arthritis symptoms or not, because a good probiotic helps you digest your food. And if you're not digesting, the highest incidence of arthritis is in people that don't have good digestive enzymes like HCl. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many good things to unpack in what you just shared. And, I think the reason I focus on those 40 plants is because, yes, absolutely, let's include fermented foods and foods that contain probiotics, but the fibers also contain prebiotics, which feed those probiotics that are indigenous to our gut that are already there. When we actually take probiotics, it doesn't replace the microbiome that we have, it just regulates that environment. And so by eating plant-based foods, eating lots of different types of fibers and phytonutrients feed the different bacteria in the gut, as absolutely. And then, to your second point too, like this connection between gut health and the rest of the body, our entire body is connected. And a lot of allopathic medicine practices really are approach the body like we have a heart, we have a gut, right? They're talking about our organs as completely disconnected, rather than really looking at how the entire system's at play and how it's all really interconnected. So our skin health is directly related to our gut health because our skin is actually the most inner layer of our gut. The most inner layer of our gut and our skin are the same layer, right? So if you have, like you said, digestive imbalance or microbiome imbalance, or you eat sugar or a lot of inflammatory foods, you're going to probably notice your skin breaks out first, right before anything else happens. But you also have your immune system. 70% of our lymphatics are located in our gut. What I was talking about before with neurotransmitters, those are produced in our gut. Our inflammation system is connected to our immune system. So absolutely you're going to have like joint pain and arthritis symptoms if there's gut imbalances. So I see, this as like so many of us are walking around with trauma. It impacts our gut, and how it impacts the rest of our system and our bodies really manifests individually for each of us. But there really is a strong physiological connection between all of this.
It's so fascinating, truly. And I liked what you said about needing the prebiotic to have the
Mm-hmm.
probiotic, which again, I'm not commercializing here, but Dr. O'Hara's, for anybody that wants it easy, it has all that in it. So I love the fact that you brought that up, because it is important in order for my probiotic to work right, to have that prebiotic. And
Yeah.
it just all goes hand in hand, though. Like, you have to nurture yourself. It's all about nurturing the body, and the self-care piece is truly self-love. It's truly like, if you're in an environment that isn't conducive, you know, if you can't completely eliminate it, then separate yourself as much as you can from negativity and drama and stress. And don't pick up the ball when someone throws it at you, or the bait. Like, it's learning these tools, because it there's no way that you're in like a World War III situation, in a, in reality or at home, that it isn't going to affect you if you don't like have some tools in your arsenal to be able to see this isn't healthy, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing healthy remotely about it, because our emotions send off about 1,000 chemicals in our body. I think that's why, like, the Bible talks about um happiness, or laughter being the best medicine,
Mm-hmm.
because this stuff is real. Like, it sends off all these chemicals, though we call it laughter, we call it happiness, or we call it anger. Chemicals are being sent off in your body, and it affects everything, your gut health, your neurotransmitters, everything.
Absolutely. And laughter specifically too, not only energetically it makes us feel good, but physiologically it helps our bodies release oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone. It helps metabolize cortisol levels and really bring our system back into balance. And so I think, when, like you were saying, like when we can really center ourselves with love, and it sounds corny, but it's really the biggest truth that I have found in my life.
Yeah.
And we can center ourselves with love, and we can say, okay, like I actually want to provide myself with love. I want to provide myself with nurturing and nourishment, right? We begin to make choices. We begin to say, that thought was really toxic, actually. Like, I wonder how I can begin to shift the way that I speak to myself, or the space that I give to myself, even energetically. Because it really does impact the way that we show up in our lives. It impacts our vitality, our ability to heal, and also prevent burnout. I've probably burnt
Right.
out like 5 or 6 times in my life because I wasn't centering my needs.
Oh my gosh, so
Right.
much, right?
And
Because you feel
so,
like you're not enough, or you gotta be more, or when you get over here, this mystical confetti is gonna fall from the sky, and the birds are gonna be like, oh,
yeah.
and you're not really paying attention to your internal guidance system.
Yeah. And it really disconnects us, like we were talking about, from that intuition, from that like animalistic, like the instincts that we have in our body that tell us, like, this is a red flag. Actually, you really need to listen to this. Right.
Red flag, red flag, red flag, mom. I can hear my daughter saying it the other day. She said it, like, I was like, oh my gosh, I have raised her well.
Well, it's good, to be able to filter out all that external noise and really drop into what's right for us. Like we can get so much advice, and that goes for our health and our bodies too, right? There's so much external noise, what our bodies should look like, or how we should be operating in the world, or doctors knows best. We're constantly outsourcing our needs, right? But like, what if we can tap into that internal wisdom and really listen to our internal guidance?
I do think the thing that we have to recognize is that stuffing or finding ways to get our emotions out, like instead of stuffing them, like a conversation with a therapist that
Mm-hmm.
is a safe place, or a friend that you trust. Like I wouldn't tell everyone your trauma. And or painting, like, or music, like listening to music, dancing, like boxing, finding ways to get those feelings out, because stuffing them, they're going to show up somewhere.
Oh, they will always come out in another way. And so I completely agree. And there is this really interesting researcher at Harvard who found that it takes 90 seconds, I think, for our bodies to process emotion. And it's the stories in our head that we get caught in it. So we like, usually it will interrupt our own emotional processing by judging ourselves, by saying like, oh, this is too much, or I shouldn't be feeling like this, right? But when we can actually just like let our bodies feel what we're feeling through, it's almost like moving through a tunnel. There is another side. It doesn't last forever, but we need to let it go through us.
I think journaling is a great way too,
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
I'm a processor, and sometimes it's so funny. I might feel something, but I don't really understand why I
Mm-hmm.
felt it. But then when I begin journaling, it's like I can connect the dots then.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, when have I felt like that before? Oh, and it can be such an eye-opening journey to just take notes about what triggers you or what you're experiencing during the day over time.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a piece of anyone's healing journey, really. I think it's an amazing piece, because that was the one I forgot to mention about getting
Mm-hmm.
feelings out,
Mm-hmm.
is you can get them all out on the
Mm-hmm.
page.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm trying to remember the lady that calls them morning pages.
Oh, it's the artist's way. Is that, yeah. Julie, I think it's Julia.
Julia, right? I was gonna say Julia, but I couldn't remember if it was not Julia Ross, but
I
is
forget
it?
her last name. Yeah, it's The Artist's Way is the book though, because I know
Okay,
exactly
so
what you're
but
talking
she
about.
talked a lot about how once you've dumped all that
Mhm.
into your writing, you've taken it off of yourself, basically.
Mhm.
And so I love that whole mentality. I learned that in IIN, which is Integrative uh, Institute of Nutrition, when I went. That
Mhm.
she was one of our lessons, and
Mm.
I love the whole premise of morning pages, where you don't even have to really know what you're going to write. You just start writing what comes.
Well,
And
and
that,
that's the goal of the morning pages is that you don't think about what you're going to write. You just let
yeah,
it flow through you, which is why that becomes a somatic practice. That becomes an embodiment practice as well.
yeah, I think it's so
Yeah.
incredible what you might discover from doing that. And you think when you start, oh, what am I going to write? You
Mhm.
just have to let go of that and start writing. And it's crazy, because even when I wrote my book, that was a whole process I did. I would just start writing, and then I would be like, come up with all these other things I want to say. And then I think, oh, that's where that piece needs to go. This piece needs to go over here. And then pretty soon you've created.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes it's just we have to get the stuff out on paper without,
Yeah.
again, judging ourselves. But another way that I love to get people to process stress, or something that I suggest to them, is getting out in nature and moving. There's something there, the negative ions in nature physically help our body break down cortisol and raise our serotonin levels, but also the movement piece, right? Helps it move through our
Oh,
bodies.
yes,
And then there's a
100%.
spiritual connection, right? Between,
Yeah.
like Mother Nature and like the bigger picture. And so I find that being in nature for me is one of those things. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm back home.
I think it makes us feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, there's something about it that like even during the pandemic, I remember if I could just get outside, I would get my convertible and put the top down and ride around and play music because it would even it was the winter because it would just make me feel free for that 30-minute drive and just feel good like that
Yeah.
the world was okay though they kept saying on the news it wasn't. And
Yeah.
so I think like that is reassuring to us somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And just that connection. Also, I think it's partially like if you could get out and take off your shoes and do some grounding, because it also is very healing to the body to get your feet just
Mm-hmm.
basically connected with the earth. And I know that for anyone that's never done grounding, that might sound woo-woo, but there's actual science
It
to it.
is.
I had Clint O'Bear on the podcast and he created all these grounding tools, like where you literally can, he said it like literally would lower your cortisol even.
Yeah, yeah, it does. So the negative ions in nature, so that could be soil, grass, air, wind, sand, natural bodies of water have negative ions. And those negative ions are what helps raise our serotonin levels, our happy neurotransmitters, and actually deplete our or like lower our cortisol levels.
Yeah.
So there really is, it does not only like feels good for our souls, but it's really physiologically, there's roots in it, like you were
Yeah,
saying.
like there's a whole science to it. And
Mhm.
that's why it's good to go barefoot and actually put
Mhm.
your feet in the grass. You know,
Mhm.
I think a lot of people feel that innately they want to do
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
innately. And so I think that we have a lot of instincts built in that we, if we paid attention to, would truly help keep us healthier.
Yeah.
Um, and what are some of your greatest success stories in healing trauma and the gut? Like what would comes to mind?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I had this, one client that I'm thinking of that, she had just, she really struggled with, can you hear me? Is that okay?
We'll edit. It froze for
Okay.
a second.
So one of the clients that I'm thinking of right now, she had so many different layers of her body that really needed attention and love and healing. And when she first came to me, we really were just focusing on her IBS. And, she was neurodivergent. She had a lot of stress in her life. And as a result of that, she was a workaholic. And she basically was drinking Soylent to survive. And that's all she would drink all day long. And so, for people who don't know what that is, it's basically just like a protein drink made from soy protein.
Okay.
And that's basically what she was living off of.
Oh wow.
And when she came to see me, like there was like all this like mental health stuff and there was digestive health stuff, and it was really unclear what was affecting what. And so we just started with diet. We started with nutrition. And it turns out that she was highly sensitive to soy. So we did a complete 180 on her diet, and we cured her IBS.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah.
yeah, and so that was really incredible, and she was able to focus better. And then as we worked together over the years, we started peeling back other layers of, how her gut health impacted her endometriosis and her hormones and her inflammation, right? And now we're on this path to getting her off her ADD medicine, through looking at her neurotransmitter levels and her
Okay.
adrenal health and her stress levels.
Oh
And
my
so
gosh, yeah.
really what we were doing was, I'm like, okay, we can't do everything at once. Like, it's just, that's not how it takes years for these issues to develop, like we can't resolve everything at once. And so what I really did was looking at the body in layers. It's like, let's address the IBS. The emotional pieces are always being worked on in the background through working on the stories that she's telling herself, her approach and her attitude towards work and perfectionism, right? In combination with supporting the gut health, right? And by supporting the gut health, reversing the IBS, then we were able to peel back even more layers to that, to the point where she was like, I'm actually ready to get off my medication. And I really want to find an alternative way to support myself. And so it's really just beautiful to witness that transformation and that evolution with someone who's so burnt out and so overworked to a place where they're really centering themselves in their healing and seeing like the physical benefits from it all.
Well, the adrenal health is a big one. I really addressed that with supplements,
Mm-hmm.
and getting plenty of sleep, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a big one. It's
Mm-hmm.
so big. Like it affects your thyroid and
Mm-hmm.
your thymus gland, all the things that really regulate whether you're tired and whether your metabolism is
Mm-hmm.
revving up. And also, again, back to the gut, it it's what you digest and eliminate, like those things, that's a very important cycle. And so having good gut health, good probiotics, good digestive enzymes, all of these things, they're all working together to really help. And somebody like Miriam can really, really investing your time and energy in hiring someone like Miriam. She can kind of get all these systems like going, like, let's work on your leaky gut. Even if you don't have it, I still think it's a good idea to address some of the symptoms because it's not going to hurt you. And then also, let's work on your like your gut, your adrenals, your emotions, all these things. And then it becomes like this puzzle pieces. You're in a beautiful picture by the time that you've got all these pieces put together, like your client. So I think it's like
Yeah.
a work of art, really, what you do, what I do. I think it's really important finding what emotions somebody's having, because I can't really, it's a mind body connection. So, like, if I want you to get to here, I need to know what else is going on. It
Mm-hmm.
isn't just about, everybody knows, eat greens and exercise
Mm-hmm.
and get sleep and drink water.
Yeah, you can print out a meal plan from the internet, but it can feel really overwhelming to navigate your own health and understand what is my next best step. Because I think the overwhelm comes from, oh my gosh, there's so many pieces, and it might feel like there's so much wrong with me, and I'm putting wrong in quotes, right? Because there's so many different aspects to address. And so I think it is really important to say, like, okay, let's take a step back and see what is the best way for you to channel your energy right now. Because the healing is a journey. It's kind of a never ending thing because it's constantly
Right.
evolving and changing. Right. And so it's all you have to do is show up in this present moment, and that informs the next. It's like a
Mhm.
game of dominoes, right? Sometimes healing
Yeah.
our gut can impact our body in a really big way. And
Right.
like you were saying, healing your gut is always worthwhile, or addressing gut health. And the biggest form of feedback that I get from my clients is, oh my gosh, I didn't realize how crappy I was feeling until I started feeling better.
Well,
People
that's the
don't
thing. People don't
understand.
know.
They don't get it, until
Uh-uh.
you're like, oh, this is how good I can feel. Like, oh, that makes a lot more sense,
Yeah.
because our medical system kind of operates in this place like it ain't broke,
Sick.
don't fix
Yeah.
it.
Sick care.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't want to be on my deathbed before I can get care. I want to feel good. Right. And I want to I want to elevate that feeling. Right. And
It's
I want
just
to use
funny
it
what
to
you
engage with
said
my
about
life.
you
Yeah.
find one thing and then you find another thing. And it's the same with emotions. Like you're
Mhm.
healing from one thing and then you're like, oh no, it was actually this, this piece. This is the root of that.
Yeah.
And it's so funny, like how everything just kind of goes together. But like I just find actually the whole topic to me is fascinating. You can really dive into all of this, and you've done such a good job unpacking it for everybody today. Where can everyone reach you on social media, work with you? Give us the 411.
Thanks so much, Linda. Yeah, so I'm on Instagram at Everybody Bliss is my Instagram handle. So I'd love to connect with you on there. And then if people are interested in nutrition or breath work support, they can visit my website. It's everybodybliss.com. I offer food sensitivity testing, but I offer coaching within a larger container as well, because we sometimes need support and partnership and accountability to make big changes in our bodies and in our lives. Yeah.
The breath work, that's the thing I forgot to ask.
Yes.
So give us just one good exercise to do when we're stressed in traffic.
Amazing. Great question. When you're stressed in traffic, focus on breathing in and out of your nose. It will regulate your hormones, and elongating your exhales longer than your inhales. Think about when you get anxious, when you get stressed, your breath gets caught up in your chest. So really channeling it down to your belly and elongating the exhales. So you want your exhales to be longer than the inhales. For people who want to do a count, they can count for an inhale of 4. They can hold that for 7 breaths, for 7 counts, and then exhale for a count of 8. But in its simplest, all they have to do is focus on exhaling through your nose, channel it to your belly, and that will physiologically calm your body down.
I already feel calmer.
Great. Mission accomplished. It's a really good exercise if you're getting impatient with your kids, or you're standing online and you're like, okay, let's go. I always revert back to that practice.
I love that. So that's a perfect way to end such a beautiful segment. I really enjoyed all that you've had to say today, and I think it was perfectly aligned for this podcast. And I love the whole connection with the trauma, the nurturing. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Linda, for having me. I really enjoyed our conversation as well.
And thanks everybody for listening to this episode of the Sisterhood of Sweat. Make sure to check out the show notes. We now have a transcript, and also reach out to us on social media at Sisterhood of Sweat. I love to hear from you guys. And as always, keep on keeping on, everybody. Bye, everyone.